Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where I interview tech leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, futurists, technologists, thought leaders, and even the occasional celebrity about how they are leveraging technology to transform their business. And today I'm excited to have Zack Weisfeld on the podcast, who is the Intel VP and GM of the Intel Ignite Accelerator program. And today we're going to be discussing exactly what the Ignite program is and how it stands out from other startup accelerators, but also learn more about the story behind it and ask him to share insights that he's gathered from this program since it began back in 2019. And also, as the journey progresses for them, I want to hear more about the recent expansion they've had in Boston over in the US. But before we start today's interview, I just wanted to give a quick mention to our sponsors, because this month the podcast is brought to you by Flipper, which is the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So, do you run your own online business? And have you ever considered selling your website, your store, your tech, or your app? Because with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making it simple to sell your online business. So to get a free valuation, visit my friends at flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, visit flipper.com/techtalks. But now it's time for me to ask you to buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to Tel Aviv and the Startup Nation, where Zack is going to be talking about how they're turning cutting-edge ideas into industry-disrupting technologies, all by giving ambitious entrepreneurs that hands-on mentorship, technical support and business acumen that they need to build world-changing companies. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. And great to be on your show. Thank you very much for having me. So Zack Weisfeld, I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Intel Ignite, which is the early stage startup program at Intel. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, so about 30 years of building companies. 8 years in Silicon Valley, the rest mostly out of here in Tel Aviv, which I'm currently in Tel Aviv. As I said, I built multiple companies, from bootstrapping to raising $120 million and selling to Google for close to nothing. And then last exit about a couple of years ago. But also I've been a corporate entrepreneur. Mid-2018, I left Microsoft for the third time. I used to run an organization called Microsoft for Startups, about 110 countries, somewhere around $500 million a year spent on ecosystem development, trying to helping startup build them properly. I founded the Microsoft accelerators, Bangalore, Beijing, Shanghai, Berlin, London, Paris, Seattle, Sydney, and Tel Aviv. And then since 2019, I'm at Intel, where I started, and now I run Intel Ignite, which is, as I said, it's an early stage program here. I'm married, 3 kids, 23, 21, 10, and a dog. And that's me.
Don't forget the dog. You mentioned everything there, from small startups, entrepreneurial life, bootstrapping, to mega corporations such as Google, Microsoft, Intel. So I'd love to take you back in time for a moment. Can you remember where your passion for tech came from, or what lit the spark in you, or just a moment that might have put you on the path you're on today? Can you remember where it all began for you?
Sure, absolutely. So actually, I think my first venture actually started at age 8, where I started a little operation of developing promotional products for businesses, mostly my father friends. And I spent the nights printing, packaging, doing all kind of things to build this little tiny business. But when we talk about tech, so early mid 80s, I got fascinated by technology with my Commodore 64. And then later on, I think I owned one of the early IBM compatible PCs that came around. It was called Spring. So that was fun, and that was my early fascination around tech. And I always loved to keep that intersection of tech and business. These are the things that really made me excited.
And in over 2,200 interviews, the amount of people that said they were inspired by those days of the Commodore 64. Who would have thought 64K of memory could have inspired so many people around the world? It's insane, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And of course, your path would lead you to the Intel Ignite Accelerator program. Everyone will hear about Intel. They know it. They'll know that little theme tune inside out as well. But the Ignite Accelerator program, a lot of people may not. So can you just tell the listeners a little bit more about the Ignite program and how it stands out from other startup accelerators out there?
Yes, maybe we'll go back in time a bit. So I founded the Microsoft Accelerators. That was 2011, 2012. And that was when Microsoft was the evil empire, right? No one wanted to come close to Microsoft, and especially not startups.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to have Satya as my early sponsor at Microsoft when he was the head of a server and tool division. And he really liked the fact that I wanted to try to reinvent the way Microsoft deals with entrepreneurs. And then when he became CEO, I had this front seat view of rebuilding Microsoft, and my part was doing it with entrepreneurs and startups. So I built my own version of corporate accelerators, which was pretty different than I think other programs out there. And then when I left Microsoft, I was contacted by the two guys that ran the operation here in Israel, the Intel, Yaniv Galti, the head of Intel Israel, and Avner Gorin, one of the chief technologists here. And they've connected with me with Bob Swan, the former CEO of Intel. And he asked me to join Intel and do something very similar to what I built at Microsoft. And this is how we started Intel Ignite. So Ignite is a 12-week, super intense accelerator program. We target the strongest deep tech disruptors that we can find in the market, really the best out there. And we take them at late seed stage. So average funding when they join us in Israel is about $5 million. In Europe is around $4 million. In the US is about $8 million. So it's kind of late seed. And then for 12 weeks, we work very, very closely with them. There are basically four engines that propel the program, the Ignite program. One, it's a very strong mentorship program, and mentorship means it's not people coming in and say how great they are and let me tell you what you need to do, but it's actually a very, very active board members on a weekly basis for your 12 weeks, and many of them go beyond that. So every startup gets an industry mentor, which is usually a founder that used to run startups, exited startups, very successful entrepreneur. And then they get also a lead mentor from within Intel that builds a group of experts around them. So, and again, this is a weekly work that they do, hours a week they spent with a startup. So that's the mentorship part. The second part is workshops and office hours. It's not an MBA. And we don't have lecturers. We have practitioners. So people that build startups or currently building startups are coming to work with the founders on building their startup, right? So if you take some of the most successful startups we have here in Israel, for example, the chief product officer of Wiz, one of our fastest growing startups in the country, I think they're valued last at about 6 billion. So he's doing a session with the startups and office hours around product. The VP of R&D and founder of Rapid, a $15 billion startup. It's the highest valued private startup in the country here, is doing an R&D session with them. How do you build your R&D team from start to, from your first 4 people to 200 people? And how do you find your leaders and et cetera? So it's founders for founders. So that's the workshops and office hours. And again, it's on a weekly basis. Then we have something called Founder Circle. So it's the founders and the team, 10 startups at a batch, are building very close relationship with successful founders. They hear a bit of their war stories, but a lot of intimate discussions about how they do things and how they do it differently than others. And then the last thing is they work with the Ignite team itself. So Ignite works in pods. Every country has a pod, an Ignite pod with 5 people. The managing director, which is always a serial entrepreneur. Some of the built companies hired, fired, raised funding, exited. They're the managing director. Then the CTO, which is a senior technical person from within Intel, very well rounded technology operator, but also highly connected within the company. Then there's an ops manager that runs the program day to day. There's a deal flow manager that's constantly out and about, look for new deals, new companies. And then there's a biz dev or a value creation person that's responsible for connecting the startups with opportunities. So that's the pod. And then we do a variety of things inside that pod. For example, there's a session we call the CEO dilemma session, which you can think of kind of peer therapy for founders, right? The CEOs are getting together in a room and they talk about the toughest issues they're dealing with right now. So again, it's, as I said, it's fairly intense, and I think a lot of focus on how do we create as much credibility for these companies and how do we create value around them, right? The value creation piece is super critical.
And before you came on the podcast today, I had a quick look on the website, and immediately it states that you help turn cutting-edge ideas into industry-disrupting technologies. And you do that by giving ambitious entrepreneurs the hands-on mentorship, technical support, and business acumen that they need to build those world-changing companies that we all know and love. And I'm curious, do you have any examples of how you've done this, just for any startup founders that could be listening around the world today?
I don't think there is a recipe, because every startup is different, right? And what we pride the program to be, it's highly, highly tailored. If you ask the 10 companies at the day they end the program, they usually say it felt like there were 10 programs running in parallel, right? Mm-hmm. So each one gets what they need. And we, even before the program starts, we have an onboarding week or a couple of weeks before this program starts. And we get the KPIs and the OKRs with the startups. Where do we need to get to 12 weeks from now? What would be success? What would success look like? And then it's different for each company. So if you take an example of a company that came to us in our first batch, a company called Granulate. They came, there were 5 people. They raised $4.5 million. They didn't have much yet, not much of product, no customers, etc. We've helped them build their sales strategy, their go-to-market. We had a person from our sales organization in the US that actually built a lot of the engagement with the customers. And eventually, 2 years later, the company was acquired by Intel for $650 million, right? This is in 2 years, right? But the reason that they were acquired, because they had super, super interesting technology that is now part of our strategy going forward, but also they had major traction. And we've helped build that traction with them. I think that they were great techies, but they didn't know much about selling, right? So give another example of a company called Hyoto. They came to us with an NLP technology they did voice understanding better than Google or anyone else, because what they've done is they've started in the automotive market, and they use the driver monitoring system to analyze leap movement of the people inside the car and actually understand who's the speaker and how to make that what they do, how to understand their speech better. Together with our mentor, they actually flew to meet with customers in another vertical, because one of our mentors thought that they should move away from automotive to retail. And they flew to Spain. They met with 15 customers over a day and a half. They came back, they analyzed the data, they pivoted, they raised additional funding, and now they've launched in the US with hundreds of selling points in drive-throughs together with Intel partners. And that was an amazing transformation of a company that was I don't know if led, but was significantly pushed forward by the Intel mentor they had in the program. So it's very different. Verobotic, the company that does this robot, these high-rise buildings, you have these people that go up and down this elevator cleaning the windows, right? So Verobotic is doing this spider-like robot that goes up and down these buildings and clean them up. And their first installment ever was on an Intel building, right? Which is, you think how important it is for a startup to say, not only that I have a customer like Intel, that I went through security, procurement, all the crazy leaps and bounds you need to go through in order to sell to a company like that. It makes your next customer so much easier to acquire, and it makes your funding much easier to get, right? When you get that through. So these are kind of an examples of things we're doing with these disruptors, and they definitely disrupt the world.
And I'm curious, what kind of projects or startups are you looking for? Because is it one particular area, or is it just those good ideas, those world-changing ideas? Is there any patterns there at all?
Yeah. So first of all, we're trying to go as deeper tech we can. Now, what is deep tech? It's a good question because there's variety. You could say anything AI you could call deep tech in a way, but we're trying to go after deep tech companies and companies that want to change the world. Right? We need to see that grit that they have, and the one important thing is they have to want and be willing to learn. Because the program doesn't work if they come and they know it all and they just want Intel as a customer. That's not going to work. We need entrepreneurs that are willing to come and learn from others and get help as they go on their journey. So deep technology, wanting to change the world, big dreams. They don't have to be silicon oriented. They don't have to be hardware oriented. They need to show great technology. They need to show there's a big opportunity they're going after and that they have real IP. So there's something unique about what they do. And also, we want them to have at least $1 million funding. We want them to be quiet. We don't want them to be busy. Quiet is not the right. We don't want them to be too busy in funding right now. We want them to have enough runway so they can actually work now on their product market fit, on their go-to-market strategy, et cetera, versus just being concentrated on funding. This is why we end up usually with companies that raised, again, $4 to $8 million, depends on the geo. So that's what we're after. It's a pretty broad spectrum. We have enterprise SaaS companies, security companies, silicon companies, quantum companies. It's very broad.
And we have listeners to this podcast in 165 countries. So if we've got a startup founder listening anywhere in the world and listening to you speak there, they're ticking all the boxes that you're looking for. What should they be doing to appear on your radar? And is there anything that they should avoid doing as well?
About 70%, I would say, of our startups or deal flow get referred to us by investors, which is very unique for accelerators. Usually, I know many VCs tells me they don't like accelerators. It became co-working spaces with lectures, and some even, many take equity, and they don't see that much of value. So on the contrary, I think with Ignite, most of our companies are coming through the investors, through investors, right? So about 70% of them. So if you have a good, strong investor, they would know how to get in front of us, and they would push you to join. So we had a great company, Exodigo, in our last batch in Tel Aviv, an amazing company that they didn't want to join, but their investors actually almost made them join the program. They said, they told them it's a critical program for their success. So that's one route is through the investors. And the easiest way is to go to the website. We have intelignite.com, and you can apply based on the geo that you want to be part of, and just be frank, be real. We are a group of founders, so it's founders to founders. We really want to see founders succeed. So I don't know about mistakes or things not to do. The one thing that we realize that we think that the diversity actually creates value, and we understand that we're biased. So we're trying. I'm not saying that we're very successful yet, but we're trying.
And of course, the program started back in, I think it was 2019. And I'm curious, are there any key insights that you've gathered since starting out? Any key lessons or anything you can share with us that you've learned along the way?
Yes. First of all, I have the best job in the world. I think we're looking at, we live in an amazing world. There's so many cool ideas. There's so many amazing founders with passion that they don't stop. They just keep on going. And the nice thing I've learned, it was in the beginning was a surprise to me, was how hungry Intel is to open up and work with these disruptors. And especially as we're turning a corner now, we have Pat as the new CEO, and he's trying to change the company and write the new chapter for this company. So we're really, really hungry to work with these disruptors, and people are the startup work with are actually surprised how open we are. They didn't think it's gonna happen with a company like Intel. Now, since I think 2019, we went through a crazy roller coaster, right? With the pandemic, with the recession up and coming here and everywhere. Even the large companies crunch that you see now with just around the world based on the economy. So everyone needs help. Everyone needs help. And small companies, big companies, and it takes a village really to build these ideas and bring them together. So, a strong learning from this work is you need advocates, you need people that would help you, and you need your unfair advantage. So if someone can give you your unfair advantage in this world, which is so hard anyways, why not take that opportunity? So that's what we've learned. That's what we preach. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a bunch of really amazing founders, help Intel learn in the process from them, because we learn a lot in the process, and help them be successful.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research, and I was reading that you recently announced an expansion in Boston over in the US. Is there anything you can share around that? Again, sounds like a big positive move for you guys.
Yeah, so we had to decide where we go next, because we started Tel Aviv, then we did Europe, and we're based out of Munich, a great program out of Munich. And then we said, okay, where do we go next? So we looked at a variety of sources. If you look at the Startup Genome Report, it's a big online project. So Boston is number 4 in the world and 3rd in the US. Right, so you have Silicon Valley, you have New York, and then you have Boston. Yeah. But when it comes to deep tech, I believe it's probably number 2 after Silicon Valley. Wow. And clearly we have our operations in the Valley as Intel. We thought Boston would be a great place for us to be, so it was pretty clear that Boston should be our next stop. We're located right in Kendall Square, so on the MIT campus, so we're close to MIT, Harvard, where a lot of these great disruptors operate. It's led by an amazing leader, a guy called Mark Kesselman, for a successful entrepreneur and an investor in his background. So he's a great match for these startups. And for our first batch, we looked at around 500 startups and picked 10. And so we've got a great batch for batch 1 in Boston. So we're very happy.
Awesome. It'll be interesting finding out more about those, maybe on another episode. But before I let you go, what's your big focus this year in 2023? Is there anything you can share about the road ahead?
Yeah. So first of all, is as I said, so first batch in the US, and that's our US expansion is an important one for us, as well as expanding in the EU. So we have, as I said, a very successful program in Munich, and we're going to add London later on in the year. So these are important geos for us to go and expand to, because there are amazing founders in these places, as you know well, and we want to work with many of them. We want to find the best disruptors and accelerate their success, make them as successful as possible. What people hear from us, and they're kind of surprised, is it's mostly about them. It's not much about us. We want to make sure we're part of their success. We co-create an amazing technology future with these disruptors. And we want that to be part of our transformation. This is an iconic brand. It's a big iconic brand that we're reinventing. So we want Ignite to be, and through Ignite startups, to be part of the recreation of this amazing brand. So that's the focus. That's a lot.
Wow. And we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And I think talking about startup life, it's always about startup stories as well. And I'm curious, you must have picked a few up along the years. So is there a funny or most interesting story that has happened in your career that you can share with us today?
Yes, I'll tell you an interesting story, and it relates to what I decided to do for a living most of the last 12, 13 years. So I was driving my car, and I got a phone call from a guy called Yossi Vardi. I don't know if you know Yossi. Yossi is one of the most well-known brands here in Israel, one of the iconic godfathers of the tech industry here. And he's a good friend, and he calls me up and say, Zack, I want you to have a conversation with this young guy next to me. He's interested in accelerators. Said, okay, Yossi asked, definitely going to pick up the phone. So he passes the phone to someone, and the guy starts talking. I say, wait, before you continue, what's your name? He says, my name is Shimon. And he continues talking. I said, no, but you have a last name? I said, no, just Shimon. And he starts talking. And then I realized just by the voice, it's the late president, Shimon Peres. He was 93 years old at that time. And he asked me to come and meet with him on one-on-one to talk about accelerators. So we met. Apparently, we met on August 16, 2016. It was one of his last business meetings ever. So about a month later, he unfortunately passed away. And it was fascinating to sit across from Mr. Perez, at 93-year-old, talking with full of passion about how he wants to light up entrepreneurship in Africa by building accelerators all over the place. And so that was a fascinating conversation that talks about entrepreneurship and innovation and about dreaming big. He was one of the biggest dreamers I've ever, definitely ever had a chance to have an engagement with. So that was a fun engagement.
Wow, what a beautiful and powerful story, and a perfect moment to end the podcast on. But before I let you go, we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time today. So can you just remind the listeners of where they can find you online, contact your team if they have any questions, or the best place for anything really that we've covered?
Absolutely. So definitely, you could reach us on any of the digital platforms. We're going to make sure that on your page, there's a link as well, but intelignite.com is the easiest way. And we're all of the team is there. You can reach us on again, any digital platform, LinkedIn or any platform. And the easiest is just to go to intelignite.com. All the information is there, and reach us directly as well. Reach me directly. And we love to help. We love to help companies be successful. We think Intel is still going to be that major technology platform, that so much technology is going to happen around us, and based on our basic technology, and you can build so much on top of that.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here today, discussing the Ignite program, what makes it stand out from other startup accelerators, the recent US expansion, but more than anything, for sharing your personal origin story, what put you on this path, and also leaving us with a great, powerful story too. But thanks for sharing that with me today, Zack.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Neil, for having me. It's been great.
What I loved about today's conversation is that very often we only get to hear about the world-changing companies when they've reached their goal, they've achieved their success, and they're sitting at the top of the summit. But for me, it's the journey to the top of that mountain where the exciting things happen. And I just loved taking a peek behind the curtain there and hearing more about how Intel Ignite are helping turning cutting-edge ideas into industry-disrupting technologies, and doing all that by simply giving ambitious entrepreneurs that hands-on mentorship, technical support and business acumen that they need to build the next world-changing companies. But that's me as an outsider listening and my key takeaways there. But if you are a startup founder that is dedicated to building the next world-changing companies, I want to hear from you. And as always, you can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please join me again tomorrow. We've got another guest lined up, and we'll explore a completely different topic together. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.